in the hill-ringed town of Kharampur, where the wind carried old judgments as faithfully as it carried dust. Everyone knew the woman they called Too Old. Her real name was Meherun, but names faded faster than reputations in places like this. At 50, with silver threading her dark hair and a calm steadiness in her eyes, she had long ago been decided upon by others. Unmarriageable, finished, useful only for advice and chores. The women whispered that fate had passed her by. The men avoided meeting her gaze as if her age were contagious. Meherun lived alone at the edge of town in a clay brick house she had rebuilt with her own hands after her parents died, earning her bread by weaving and tending a small herb garden that healed more people than the town healer ever did. She had loved once, years ago. A quiet love that promised much and delivered only patience. And when it ended, not in betrayal but in death, she folded that chapter carefully and placed it inside herself. Like a pressed flower, the town decided that her story had ended there. But Meherun kept living, rising before dawn, working until her hands ached, and laughing when she could, because survival was a kind of courage no one applauded. It was on a morning washed pale by rain that the young warrior arrived, wounded and half-conscious, carried by his horse into the yard of her house as if the animal itself knew where mercy lived. He was called Arslan, no boy but a grown man in his mid-20s, sworn to protect the northern road from raiders, his armor cracked, his shoulder gashed, pride leaking away with blood. Meherun did not hesitate. She had treated farmers and children and old soldiers alike, and pain recognized her as an authority. She cleaned the wound, set bone, brewed bitter tea, and spoke to him not as a legend or a threat but as a human being who needed to rest. Arslan woke to the smell of herbs and bread and to a woman who met his eyes, without fear or flattery, a woman who spoke plainly and asked nothing. Days passed into weeks, as the rain softened the land and Meherun's care softened the edges of Arslan's assumptions. He had been raised on songs of glory and quick love, on the idea that worth was measured in strength and youth. Yet here was a house that ran on patience, hands that worked steadily, a mind that remembered stories of the valley before roads cut it open. They talked as equals, about loss, about duty, about the quiet terror of being decided by others, before you could decide for yourself. When Arslan was strong enough to stand, the town noticed and judgment sharpened. What does she want with him? They murmured. Isn't she ashamed? Meherun heard, as she always did, and she smiled, the tired smile of someone who had stopped asking permission to exist. Arslan, for his part, felt something new and unsettling, respect that grew into admiration that warmed into affection. It was not a lightning strike, but a sunrise, gradual and undeniable. He saw how Meherun faced contempt without shrinking, how she carried grief without bitterness, how her laughter, rare but genuine, made a room feel larger. When he finally prepared to leave, healed and grateful, the road felt heavier than his armor. He promised to return with payment she refused. And when he rode away, Meherun watched without hope and without despair, because she had learned that loving the present was safer than bargaining with the future. Yet the future, stubborn as it is, had already begun to bend. Arslan returned not with coins but with choice, coming back to Kharampur between patrols, bringing news, seeds for her garden, and a presence that settled easily into the rhythms of Meherun's days. And with each visit the town's certainty cracked a little more. People saw the warrior listen more than he spoke, saw him mend fences and carry water without complaint, saw Meherun's house become a place of conversation rather than suspicion. The gossip did not stop. Prejudice rarely does, but it lost its teeth. When Arslan finally spoke of love, he did so without grand speeches or promises that age would make ridiculous. He spoke of partnership, of learning, of choosing each other against the noise. Meherun did not answer at once, because she respected the weight of what he offered and the risks it carried for both of them. She thought of the years she had spent being told what she was not allowed to want, and she thought of the man before her who had learned that strength could be gentle. When she said yes, it was not defiance but clarity. The town reacted as expected, some anger, some mockery, but also surprise when the sky did not fall and life went on. They married simply, witnessed by a few who believed courage came in many forms, and the marriage was not a fairy tale of endless ease but a real union shaped by patience and humor. Arslan learned the value of roots. Meherun learned that beginnings do not expire. Together they built a life that made room for difference. Age, experience scars, and in doing so, they offered the town a quiet lesson that love is not a permission slip issued by strangers, but a practice chosen daily by two adults who see each other clearly. Years later, when travelers passed through Kharanpur, they heard a story not about a spinster or a scandal, but about a home where wisdom and courage shared a table. And if this story moved you, if it reminded you that hope does not have an age limit and that dignity is a love language, then stay with us. Subscribe to the channel and keep these stories alive, because every subscription tells us you believe there are still new endings to be written.